Yep, that's right. I wouldn't be walking if it weren't for Vince Gironda of Vince's Gym and his dmso. Uh, I met Vince at his own gym years ago out in the valley. I think it was Studio City. It was a little garage gym. And I've been to all kinds of gyms all over the state of California. And my husband at the time was Bill West. And uh, I could go to just about any gym and get in free because people knew me. And I knew Bill. And this guy was an older guy, and he'd known Bill pretty well. And he had a really great garage gym out in the valley. And I was out in the valley. I think I was bartending out there at the time. And I heard about Vince's gym, and I decided to go down there, and it was like $350 a workout or something like that. And it was somewhere like in the late 70s, I guess. Maybe early 80s. And walked in and we were talking because he knew who I was when I walked in. He just looked at me as I had done a couple competitions. And I pushed a lot of iron back then. And I wasn't a power lifter, just bodybuilder. And Bill taught me. Anyway, went from fat girl to buffed. What do they call it? Twisted steel and sex appeal. They used to call me that on stage. But anyway, so I had fallen in Hawthorne Mall from the second floor on the stairwell on the west side, shopping up there with my floor-length fur coat on and my ankle-wrap rhinestone black satin stiletto heels, going down the marble steps, and I fell and whacked my knee. And so when I went to Vince's gym, he had asked me what was wrong with my knee, because I had like a wrap on it or something. And I said, oh man, I busted it like months ago. And I said, it's messed up. I can't even kneel down on it or anything. It's really bad. So I took the wrap off, let him look at it, and he was, most bodybuilding people are really into health and fitness and vitamins and all that kind of stuff, and they really have some great answers instead of going to a doctor, and I hated doctors. Plus, I didn't have insurance. But I had a little bit of money, but, So he says, have you ever tried dmso? I'm like, what the heck is dmso? And so, he said you get it at health food stores. I sell it, everything. He said, you need to put that on your knee. He said, it looks like it's been shattered. And I'm like, oh no, that's really bad. Do I need surgery or have to have it replaced? Or he said, well, I would do dmso and keep working out. And I said, it makes it hard, but I'm doing it. That's why I'm working out. And so this is dmso. And I sell it on my website on roll-on because it's better because you don't have to touch it or anything. It when you put it on, it goes through your bloodstream, and it kind of has an aluminum taste to it, like diet soda, like Tab, the diet soda. And then it was sold in the health food stores and everything for the longest time, and then they pulled it off the market. And the reason they did that is because people would use it on things like their knee or something, and then go strip the floor with ammonia or bleach or something. And what happens is the dmso opens up your pores and makes the blood run, and it runs to repair the injury, whether it's bone or whatever. And you don't want your pores open and to absorb those chemicals, because it could poison you. So you have to use it on very clean skin, preferably freshly washed, and then cover it up and keep it from anything to get on it to absorb through that skin. So Uh, dmso was relatively cheap back then. I mean, for a medical cure, it's probably about the same price, I guess, today. But I thought, well, it's worth a try. So, I had bought some from him, I think. And, I tried it. I used it every day. And my knee got better, amazingly enough. And I never did have surgery. So, then, now Vince, he passed away, I guess, around 97. He was like 79 years old, went to bed, never woke up. But he had NSP Nutrition. And his nickname was Iron Guru. And he was from the Bronx in New York. Then a couple years later, a place I was running down in Inglewood, California, it was, there was a guy that came by that was a friend of a girl I was training, Annette Jackson. She was a Olympic female powerlifter. This guy, he was like, I guess in his late 40s, and his wife had really bad back problems and stuff. And so he was seeking Annette to maybe see if he could get her to help train his wife, maybe workouts, because Annette ran into him and told him, you ought to get her working out, which that's true. If you stop moving, that's when your stuff goes to hell. And now we're not doctors, we're just, we love iron. But anyway, so I was talking to him and I said, he said, I'm just in tears. My wife, she wants to be in bed all the time, and her back is really bad and she can't walk. She's had 2 surgeries, and I'm like, that's just the worst. I said, you need to try dmso. He's like, what is that? And I told him about it and everything. Well, after about 6 months, between working out and doing dmso, she was fine. And he was forever grateful, offered me money, everything. I said, no. I'm just glad that everything worked out great. So then, I was with a guy named Carl Fitch. I was engaged to him in the end. Unfortunately, he was a CPA and that. And we had a dog named Spring, and she is a white German Shepherd, and obviously inbred. That's how they usually have white German Shepherds anymore, but they were inbred. And usually when they're inbred, they have deformities. And the most common of all is the hip dysplasia, which is really a bad thing. I had researched it and found there was a hospital in Mississippi that would do hip surgery, and I was making really good money bartending in the casinos in Tunica. It's Flash Casino. I was making huge money. And I thought about paying for her surgery to have her hips done, put plastic hips in there. It was like a really new thing. It was like $2,000 to do that. And then I thought, I wonder if dmso would fix that. Now, dmso is used for racehorses. That's basically where it all started. They put it in a big bucket and they use a big paintbrush. And when a racehorse gets injured on the track, they take it, they bring the horse in and they just brush that crap all over them, just like whitewash, and send them right back out on the track. And so that's pretty incredible. If you'll take, a $1 million racehorse and put dmso on it to cure it, I think that's pretty darn good. So the vet, I called him and talked to him about that surgery. He didn't do that surgery, only that college or university in Mississippi did it. And so I said, well, do you have dmso? And he says, yeah, we use that at times. He said, you could try it, but she's gonna die because her hips are wasted. She's an inbred. And I said, dmso works great. I said, I've even used that. And he goes, really? And he said, well, humans aren't supposed to use it. I said, well, they used to, but people don't understand how to use it properly. said it was pulled off the market, but, you know, kept for veterinary use. And so he says, yeah, I have it, and I prescribe it, and all that. I said, well, great. I said, make a prescription for me, make one for the dog. I'm going to try the dmso on her. And he says, well, he says, I hate to tell you, he said, I can't prescribe it to you. I said, well then, give me 2 prescriptions for the dog. And he kind of laughed, and he said, I'll have them ready in a little bit. I said, okay. Went down, picked it up. I think I paid like $30. And so, and that was for a couple little bottles, like 2 ounce each or something. 2 or 4 ounce each, I don't know. And so then I shaved the worst part of her butt up on the top. It was like her lower, like her hips. Shaved that off, and then, you know, washed her up real good, and then put that dmso on. And she started walking really, really good. And every time she'd have trouble with her hips, instead of taking her in for steroid shots or whatever, I would just shave her butt where I knew it was the worst, like where her hips connected to her spine, and then, you know, put some dmso on her. You just use it real sparingly. You just one shot, wham, and stop. You don't rub it in, do anything weird with it. You just get it on the skin and let it dry. And it's like a clear liquid. Anyway, she lived for many, many years and never had to have that surgery. And she was old to begin with. I think she was 17 at that time. And what a great dog. And the reason that she was named Spring is because when she was younger, she could jump any fence no matter how high it was. So she was called Spring. Anyway, I busted my back at Platinum Plus, Memphis, Tennessee, on stage. And over black girl's hair grease. Yeah. And that was before they outlawed it on the stages. And because girls would use baby oil on their skin, or black girls would use black girl hair grease. And I was coming down the rails at the stairs, and I did this little thing. I had my gloves on and everything, and I did this little thing, little dance thing at the top of the stairs, and then I would swing one leg up over one rail, the other leg up over the other rail with my hands attached to the rails, each one, and then slide down, and then put my feet on the floor and do a little dance, turn around, and go back up on the stage. And that didn't work out so well. I was going ultra fast because there was black girl's hair grease on the rails. And I had a choice, my teeth or my butt. And my dad put like $5,000 to straighten my teeth and everything. I have really pretty teeth. And I decided I would take my butt. And I hit the edge of the step and trashed my tailbone, amongst other things. Finished my set in excruciating pain. And the people that were in the audience said, we saw your face, and it did not look good. We thought something happened. And, you know, I've come from the day of, you know, you always finish your show. You don't walk off stage, all that kind of stuff. So it was kind of interesting. But I finished my set and got off the stage, and, I mean, just about crawled back to the dressing room. I was in bad shape. My manager came back, are you okay? And I'm like, no. And I said the rails were really greasy. They went out and checked them, and they were bad. And they had to do a stage service on the stage. And then he's like, well, I don't know what to tell you. Are you going to be okay, you know, to keep working today? And I'm like, no. And so we went back and forth. And finally I said, well, look, I had a friend of mine who's a lawyer that was in the audience. A good friend of mine. He's like, they need to send you to the hospital. And I said, no doubt. And he said, they need to pay for it. Well, finally Matt, who was manager then, he says, well, you need to go to the emergency room, Red. And I'm like, okay, I hope you guys pay for it. Which I doubt they ever did. If Ralph Noddy was there, he would have paid for it. He was the owner of Platinum back then in Memphis. So I went to the emergency room. They gave me a prescription Percodan and said I'd done some bad damage. I had 4 busted discs They were slipped or something, and then a shattered tailbone. And I'm like, what is a tailbone? Tailbone is kind of like a kitty cat tail. It's a part that goes below your spine, which is part of your spine, and it's like a little kitty cat tail. And when you ever shatter that, it is really a bad thing if you break it or shatter it. It makes it really hard to sit or anything. Really bad. Really, really bad. And so, and it lasted a really long time. And so, I had to quit dancing. They owed me about $2,000 in pay at that time, because I was a house featured billboard girl back then. And I never did get that money. But the guy that was in charge of the platinum clubs and Lunati stuff was a guy named Skinny, who wasn't skinny. He was nicknamed that in jail. It's a long story. Anyway, he said, well, all I can tell you is you're welcome in our clubs anytime to dance or run costumes. And at that time, I had 3 shops in Memphis. And I was like, ugh. So, I made huge money being a feature, but I made great money, dressing showgirls. And, I traveled around a little bit back then, to other clubs in other states, but I hadn't gone, nationwide quite yet, I don't think. And, so, anyway, I lived on that damn Percodan for about 6 months. And, then I was doing chiropractors, $100 each. I had to walk with a cane most of the time when I could walk. As a matter of fact, a dancer in Huntsville at Cats gifted me a cane one time. It was beautiful with like a mermaid, a brass mermaid on the top. And then when you unscrewed it, it had like a blade in there, a big long sword. Most beautiful thing ever, and they stole it out of my big house when it got hit by a tornado. It was so bad, it was by the back door. I wished I had it today. I could have used it many times. And I've never find another one like it. And anyway, she had gifted it to me, as she had used it for a little bit when she got injured. And then she said, here, I want you to have this so you'll always be able to walk. And I was like, wow. Then I also made this girl's wedding gown, made her numerous outfits. She was really a great friend and customer. And then I was doing $100 each in chiropractors every time. Chiropractors all over the states. I traveled all over the states running costumes. Back then we had loaders. So I rarely ever had to load my own bags into the clubs to dress the girls. We had doormen and stuff that did that, and I tipped them and everything. And then the times I would work and I had a cane, I would walk with a cane, girls would say, oh my God, Ray, what happened to you? Did you have a stroke? And I'm like, no. I said I busted my back on the platinum stage in Memphis, and it goes in and out at times. And I said, but I'm going to tell you one thing, get dancer insurance. I had the option to sue the club, but suing a strip club is not always a good idea, because it could be very hazardous to your health. But then in my travels running costumes, I met a door guy named Woody, who was a rodeo rider, big time rodeo rider, and he said that he had broke every bone in his body, if not once, if not twice, and he is stapled and screwed together and pinned together and all kinds of stuff. And he said, man, you need to get off that Percodan and do Tylenol, okay? So I said, really? He said, yeah, Tylenol. He said, get off the Percodan. And I said, man, I could chew on wood sometimes, the pain is so bad. And he said, no, Tylenol. So I got off the Percodan, which was a great thing. Because, it's really hard to drive a crap like that. You don't need to be driving when you're taking that crap. I could only take it when I wasn't working. Like at night at a hotel or whatever. And so, then I did that. So I was doing Tylenol and dmso. Then I had a Huntsville chiropractor, and boy, that joker, he was fine too. Out of all these different chiropractors, I would get one in every state, because if I had a problem, I would go see a chiropractor. And there was a couple managers of clubs and one door guy that would, yank my back when I would be at work if I was having trouble walking or something. That was great. Because my disc would go in and out. By the time the third one goes out, I stop walking. So I was doing the Tylenol and dmso thing when I needed it. And the Huntsville chiropractor wanted to sell me this new thing they were doing. They're taking pregnant woman's placenta or something, and then it would inject it in you or something like that, and it was supposed to heal your broken back. And it was really costly, and it was like repeat treatments and stuff. And I was like, man, I don't know if that's real or not. Or surgery at $30K. And I had a chiropractor back in Arkansas, out by the Mississippi River, and Doc Berry, and he was like, don't do surgery, don't do surgery. I had a customer at Matador in Valparaiso when I was featuring one night that sat at a table, and everybody got to tell you what you need to do, okay? What is going to fix your back? And it's like, dude, are you a doctor? No. So I'm like, well, I use dmso and Tylenol. And I do a lot of milk products. Okay? And that's probably what really helped me the most, is the milk products. Cheers. So he said, oh, no, I gotta tell you about shark cartilage. And I'm like, huh? Now, I'm a big vitamin person. I take vitamins like people eat peanuts. I take them all day long. I used to take them in a big handful in the morning, but I can't do all that anymore. I take them all day long. So he says, well, you need to try shark cartilage. And I'm like, what? He says, well, the shark cartilage is incredible. And this guy wrote a book about it. If sharks don't die of cancer, do they? And I'm like, okay. And he said, so they treat it for, cancer and a few other things. And he said, it's really, really good. He said, he wrote a book about it. Sharks don't die of cancer, do they? And you need that book. And then I'm like, oh, God, here we fucking go. And he's talking about, well, you should do the electric treatments. And I said, yeah, I've done that. Because I was in a car wreck. And with my Fiat, a guy rear-ended me at a stopped light in front of Santa Monica College. And they did electric treatments on me, heat treatments, all kinds of stuff like that. I knew that wasn't going to really work. It feels good, but it's really expensive if you don't have insurance. But anyway, I ended up getting some shark cartilage at a health food store. And years later, they would carry it at Walmart. And now they've stopped carrying it at Walmart. And they used to carry it at Rite Aid and CVS. And I think they stopped carrying it there now. So it's really hard to find. And that's been great. It's really strong calcium. And women should take calcium anyway, double of what men do, because their backs get bad and their bones get bad quicker than men do. And so then I was still going to chiropractors all over the States when I started feeling bad or yank my back out, I would go to chiropractor. So I used to go to Doc Bury. He was a chiropractor from Switzerland, a good friend of mine. He charged like $20 a visit, did it in the back room. He killed his license years ago to retire. And he was building furniture and lived in this big warehouse because his kooky daughter took over his big Victorian house, prettiest house in town, which burned later. And so he stayed at the shop, and I traded him a car I had, a convertible, for lifetime treatments, and then he passed away. I think it was back in the early 2000s. It was really sad. The car lasted longer than he did. But he helped me a lot too. I had doctors telling me I'd stop walking in 5 years. And I had bought a big house. The last one I swore I would ever renovate. Out by Memphis. Big 5-story Victorian. 200-year-old. And bought it all by myself. With no man's help. And the bank wouldn't touch me either because I was a single parent. And I swinging a hammer on that. And It was a big place. It was a really big place. And so I was building ramps to my big house because I knew I'd be wheelchair bound. And I was working in Huntsville running costumes. And I had stopped walking for like a week. And I called Doc and I said, "Oh my God, my back is so bad. Wish you were here. You coming to Huntsville anytime soon?" And he was like, "No." And I'm like, he's like, "What's wrong?" I said, "I can't get up for like a week. I can't take a bath. I can't do anything. It is terrible." He said, "If you can get to a hot bath, do that." He said, "But you've got to get up." And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Your hips will turn to arthritis. You don't want that. You'll have to live with that the rest of your life." I said, "What are you talking about?" And he's like, "You got to get up and walk." I said, "But I can't walk." He said, "Well, you're going to have to find something." You know, I'm like, "I don't have a cane or anything." He's like, "Anything, a broom, mop, whatever you can find, walk." So the people's house that I stayed at, Jerry and Debbie Bonds, which I had keys to the house for years and had my own room there, so I could stay there anytime I come in town. They're really nice people. He has since passed away. He had throat cancer. And I went into the kitchen and I got a broom. And I took it outside because their house wasn't that big. It's just a one-story tower. And I took it outside and walked all up and down the street with this broom, like dragging myself so I could walk. And they had a jacuzzi there and later got in a jacuzzi and stuff. But I did damage to my hips. He was right. It could have been worse though. Then I fell on the front steps of my Adams house, my big giant Victorian that I bought. And the steps were bad. It was a very old house, and I hadn't got to the steps yet. But they were huge. It was like a big granddaddy house, you know. And big front steps, big walkway, roses, white FK roses down the walkway, and, you know, 15-car driveway and the whole thing. And so I was stuck in bed in my big house for about 2 weeks all alone. Couldn't get to the phone. Could move my head and could move my arms a little bit, but the rest of me, there was nothing. And I just lay there in my bed. And the only thing I did was tell day or night because I was on my back. Because I had all windows, the whole wall on the one side was all windows to the driveway. So I could see the daylight in the dark. I could hear the phone ringing. It was in the first parlor. And this thing was like 3,000 square foot per level. And so I was on the main level in the master bedroom. And then the bathroom was like, probably 15 feet from my bed. And I had a stand-up beach shower in there, which would have been great if I could have got to it. So I lay there for 2 weeks, so you can imagine what that was like. And George James had a set of keys to my house in the event of emergency, because I was by myself. I wasn't married at that time or anything. And he decided to pop on by. Because he probably drove by a million times and saw my cars all there. I had 6 cars in the driveway, mostly Cadillacs. And I was collecting them. I wanted one for every day. Just to make people laugh. And I really like Cadillacs because it saved my life once. And so I heard the lock turn, and he come walking in the house. He stands in my bedroom with his hands on his hips, and he goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "Just laying here." And he goes, "Why?" And I said, "Because I cannot walk." And he goes, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, I've been here like 2 weeks." He said, 2 weeks? I said, "I'm really serious." And he says, "Well, what can I do?" And I said, "Well, first thing you could do is pick me up out of here and carry me over to the shower so I can get in the shower. Because this is terrible. And hopefully I could stand up." And I was like wood. And so he did it, and I went over there and got in the shower and Oh, God. That was such a relief. I can remember that water going over the top of my head. And, so, it was a good thing I had somebody had keys to my house. And I said, man, I hope that never happens again. So then, Mrs. Ike Harcourt, Lena Harcourt, she worked at the bank. I think it was Helena National Bank, as a teller for years. And it was really funny. In the last, like, couple years she worked there, she had to wear surgical gloves, like these, to dispense money and count it. Because she turned out she was allergic to money. And so her husband passed away, just surprisingly. What a nice man he was. Ike Harcourt Sr. And so she was on her own, living in the house with her son, who was handicapped, and his name was Ike Harcourt Jr. And so Ike and I were buddies. He's like my brother. And Ike had told me one day, he said, man, you know, I wish you could help. He said, because you're incredible yourself. He said, my mother is about to drive me crazy. He said, you know, she normally walks with the ladies every evening about 5 o'clock. And all the older ladies in the area, in the neighborhood, go for a walk up in the hills there on Military Road. And he said she can't walk anymore. So what do you mean your mom can't walk anymore? He said, I don't know what's wrong. I just, you know, I think maybe you could help her. So I went to go talk to her at her house. She's a sweet lady. I just love the world out of her. And I said, well, what's wrong that you can't walk? She said, oh, God, my hips. And I said, you got the arthritis in the hips thing, huh? And I said, it's really bad. It comes with age. And then, you know, if you sit still, you got to keep moving. I said, Doc Barry taught me that. And I said, look, old Vince, Gironda, Vince's gym taught me about this dmso years ago. And I think you should try it. And now Ike had told me before, he said, whatever it costs, if she'll take it, I'll pay for it, whatever. She's like, well, how much does it cost? I said, nothing. So she says, well, I just don't know. I said, look, it's a health thing. It's an ointment. They use it on racehorses. Told her the story about spring. And told her it's really great stuff. And she should do okay. That I'd helped her back in California, the guy's wife. And kept her from 30,000 surgery. So, anyway, I gave her a bottle of it. It was a roll-on bottle. And I had found a way to put it into a roll-on thing, like roll-on deodorant. And I gave